We want to discuss the implications of this potential shift in U.S. policy with the author of today's New York Times story, David Sanger, who is also author of The Inheritance, The World Obama Confronts and the Challenges to American Power. He joins us from the Times newsroom in Washington. David, good to see you again. Thanks for being with us. How big a departure from past policy would this be if the Obama administration drops the requirement that Tehran shut down its nuclear facilities during the early phases of negotiations?
You know, Martin, it would be a big change because the Bush administration, you'll recall, at first said they would not negotiate with Iran at all if they were producing, enriching uranium while negotiations were underway. Then they softened that a little bit at the end of the administration and said they only needed to turn it off briefly to get negotiations started. But clearly the thinking before was you couldn't negotiate with Iran while they held the gun to your head that they were producing more uranium and moving toward that day when they would have enough for a weapon or two. And now, if this proposal goes ahead, the thinking will be it's more important to coax the Iranians along, get them to allow in inspectors, and put up with a little bit more enrichment along the way.
Obviously, not everybody's going to see it that way. What kind of resistance would there be to this approach from, say, Israel or friendly Arab states?
The biggest concern will come from Israel. The Israelis came to the U.S. a year ago seeking from President Bush the overflight rights over Iraq, the bunker-busting weapons, and the refueling capability that they would need to take out the Natanz plant. So even a year ago, they were very nervous that the Iranians were making too much progress. President Bush turned them down. If the Israelis believe that President Obama is going to get strung along by the Iranians, that somehow the Iranians are going to manage to drag this out and produce more uranium, at some point they're going to come back to the administration, now the Obama administration, of course, and either ask for the same material or tell them that they're going to go ahead. So you have two clocks ticking here, a Washington clock and a Jerusalem clock.
There is another nuclear country in the news today, North Korea, and it says that it will not participate in future six-party talks. What does that mean for the Obama administration?
Well, the declaration today by the North Koreans was not unexpected. There was a fairly stiff UN Security Council President statement that passed yesterday condemning them for that missile launch they did about 10 days ago. And it's not unusual after something like that that they declare that they're going to drop out of the talks. I think the harder question for President Obama is this: does he focus on luring the North Koreans back in? Or does he draw a harder line and actually begin to enforce some of the UN resolutions that have passed before? There was one 3 years ago after North Korea's nuclear test that actually allowed countries to stop and board and inspect North Korean ships to make sure that they're not moving prohibited arms or nuclear equipment. That's never been done. Seems unlikely to me that President Obama would try to start off with that now while he's got so many other problems brewing.
David Sanger of the New York Times, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Martin.